vacation.
Oh, Nashville? Yeah, it's cool. Really good. Great time.
Karaoke at the golf course tonight.
They got a 8 a.m. Blue Meets Green thing all day. I gotta be on my best behavior.
5 seconds.
We're going to call the County Board of Commissioners workshop to order. Roll call.
Commissioner Samasco?
Present.
Commissioner Baldwin?
Here.
Commissioner Beeden?
Present.
Commissioner Torello?
Here.
Commissioner Rushing?
Here.
Commissioner Vanden Bosch?
Here.
Commissioner Chairperson Bo.
Here. Stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Additions, deletions, changes to the agenda. Seeing none, do I have a motion?
So moved. Support.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Citizens to be heard. Liz Masters, Wales Township, 26 Mile.
Thank you for your time. Can you hear me all right? Okay, I won't take up too much time. I'm Liz Masters, Supervisor of Wales Township, and I'm just going to reiterate on my past appearances. I do oppose to the use of the ARPA funds, and Wales Township has moved on that as well, to oppose the use of the ARPA funds on the 26 Mile Road project. Also, I'd like to mention that I've attended China Township meeting this past week, and they have filed a resolution in opposition. And I'd just like to repeat what I heard from 40 residents of that particular community. They were all touching on topics that were in relative to planning and zoning within their community. And I would like to ask this board, please do not infringe upon a township, whether it's mine or another's, on another township's or ours, planning and zoning. Let those residents, let their boards, let their planning commissions make those decisions. So I'd like to reflect on that, and again, I'd just like to file that I do oppose to the use of ARPA funds or county funding for that particular project. Thank you for your time.
Ken Harris.
Good evening, County Commissioners. What I'd like to talk to you briefly about tonight is also the 26 Mile Road corridor. You know, when you talk about this corridor stuff, I think one of the things you have to look at, and I even went to the far part of looking at the code of conduct for St. Clair County Commissioners. They're quite liberal, but I think if you really look at them, and before you take any actions, you basically lean to some of these things that you won't do anything that's going to benefit you, it's going to benefit the public. And I think it's a strong remark not to honor that when you get done with this, things with that. But the other thing is, I think I'd like to commend the people here, that some of them that here earlier, it's unprecedented because I've tried to go onto Google and different websites, and I found no other community that shared their American Rescue Funds with the individual council commissioners. You know, this little ticket of $500,000 prior to the election just kind of, to me, unstable whether there was a fairness involved or not, because evidently we have two people up here that didn't get a chance to do the same thing. So, but the other thing I think that we really have to accept is the number of things that aren't done in St. Clair County. I filed a pending action with the United States Department of Transportation and Michigan Highway Department. The viaduct on 24th Street, being it's a trunk line, it's governed by city, county, and the state of Michigan. If anybody that has any familiarity with it will see how bad this area is. This is an old thing. It's probably pretty near 100 years old, the viaduct is. The asphalt and this concrete is substandard. The walkway for the pedestrians, which is only on the east side, is not ADA compliant. It's never been kept up to compliance. See, the place, the road surface is gone, and the fact is, if you get there when the train goes across, you can feel the movement of the property. I have not received anything back from the United States government on it, and I'm hoping that if we've got this kind of rescue funds, that we attract this, because it does affect our county. And last but not least, I think the one thing we have to, the unfinished thing that I have to look at, I know this is not part of the county road commission, but county road commission depends on you for funding and stuff. And last year, the people of Kimball Township got left with half of Grizzle Road done and half of Sparling Road done. Grizzle Road, they decided after Leland Road, they got about 100 yards, and they said, that's it. That's as far as we're going to go on Grizzle Road. When they did Sparling Road, they started at Dunlap Road, and they went to Sunnyside Road, and then they stopped right there. So here's two projects that are only half done and need to be done. They are probably the worst, some of the worst paved services in the county. And last but not least, when we're looking at other sites, I looked at M19 at the exit there on I-69. You look at the Dove Road area off of 69.
You need to wrap it up, Ken, please.
Okay. And last but not least, I think that, we're talking about 26-mile road, and here we have Fredmore Highway adjacent to it, and no talk about helping that. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to move on to new business, Health Department building discussion. Carrie?
So at our last meeting, when we were speaking of internal projects, a very large ticket item on your currently approved capital improvement plan is a new health department building. A health department facility that is one of our oldest facilities. It is in need of some significant renovations. So portions of ARPA funds would be eligible to use it for portions of renovations because it is considered a community health center that does serve an underserved population. We would not be able to use funds to construct a full building, but there would be portions of it. But I felt it was important to begin the discussion on the health department building because this has been on the radar for a long time, and it is part of the list. And since we're discussing potential allocation of ARPA funds, I thought it would be appropriate to bring it up. You all did receive a copy of the building study last year with the approved capital improvement plan, and a copy of the building study was also attached to this agenda. I also have Liz King and Greg Brown here that can speak to more specifics on the building. But at this point, I would like to at least start the discussion and get some direction if the board is open to us exploring an alternate location, or if you would like to see potential renovations to our existing site. And an alternate location wouldn't necessarily have to be a new build. It could be relocating to another facility that's better suited.
Liz, you want to talk a little bit? All right, you guys tag team it. It's loosey-goosey. One comment about the new building. We got the bid openings for the EDA building, and we about choked on them. Had way more money than what we thought. And then some of these other projects, when you start talking about new buildings and things like that, literally we just spent, I don't know how long on that thing, and that thing was crazy expensive. And we actually today voted to pull that project because it was millions of dollars over. So.
I can kind of speak to anything clinically about this, or responses maybe from staff or clients who come in the building, those kind of things. When the study was done, I was still the nursing director. Greg kind of oversaw the program and project. So anything specific to all those size details, HVAC, plumbing, all of that, I think Greg's the expert on this. But again, my expertise comes from comments from public, how difficult it is at times to service our disabled adults and children with the lack of ADA compliance that goes on, safety issues with the staff, security with a lot of our supplies and throughout the building. So that would be, if you have questions about that, I'm happy to answer or elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, if you look at the report in the back with the conditions of the building, I mean, the building cosmetically looks all right when you walk in, but there are plenty of mechanical things, ceilings. The parking lot is just you're gonna lose a vehicle in a pothole pretty soon. But one of the biggest things is the amount of space that we have. We have storage just everywhere. We have plywood storage bins under stairwells. We brought in a shipping container, steel ship, we have federal assets in there for emergency preparedness, over $10,000 worth in a steel shipping container. The study indicates we need around 50,000 square feet. We're at about 31,000. And so we have programs split up from area to area. We have intakes for multiple programs in multiple areas because we have no central intake area. So it's a very inefficient building to run. We could even be more efficient with staffing if we had more of a central intake area instead of having an area for second floor clinic, WIC, IMS, environmental health. Those are all separate, have to be staffed separately because there is no place centrally for that. And then another problem that routinely comes up is the ADA compliance. We have WIC moms with kids in strollers. They go in for their WIC visits. There is no way to physically get them to the IMS part of our building for their other appointments, other than going back outside, down the sidewalk, up a ramp, and back in the main doors again. And so they got to bundle up their kids. We've gotten multiple written complaints about that from parents, because in the wintertime, that's very, very much not good. Actually, one of our Board of Health members cannot do stairs very well. Same thing, she has to go outside the building to get to our conference room. We have only 2 ADA compliant bathrooms in that whole building with 100 employees. And one set is in that north area where our conference room is, and that is the area that is not accessible. There's no elevator there, and it's all stairs to get there. And the other one is upstairs in our admin area. The main area where you walk in, those bathrooms are not ADA compliant. So there's issues like that. The main doors are very bad. They're very expensive to replace. We had a break-in a while back by someone just jiggling the door hard enough to disable the latch. And she came in and slept on one of our carts in the maintenance area overnight. And so those type of things are very expensive to repair. But ultimately, it really is a space thing too. We've been expanding a little bit with staff, and we've got makeshift cubicles put up in the administration area. We actually have 3 closed-door offices that are storerooms that we could put 2 people in one office and 2 others are single offices, and they're filled with storage stuff. And so we have storage in the basement of this building, and then just makeshift all over our building. And we also have emergency preparedness trailers in the van. They're all out in the parking lot covered in the tarp. And those trailers are very expensive, and to leave them parked outside with our emergency preparedness assets in it is very disconcerting. So I guess the report does speak a lot for itself. There are some things that are out of code that people said should be repaired regardless of what we do with the building. I don't know those right offhand again, but there they are in that report. So, but I'd entertain any questions if anybody has any.
So how many commissioners have been in that building?
Actually, I went yesterday,
Okay.
and I kind of did a tour with the
I
maintenance guy.
think it was an old road, wasn't it an old road
Yeah.
commission building?
Yeah,
back
it was the old DPW building.
That's where I used to live, South Park, when I first got married, 48 years ago. And it was there then.
It still says public service building on the front from the DPW days.
Did we have estimates as far as what the numbers again were in the capital improvement program too?
There are estimates in there, note that a lot of this was done pre the current environment for costs, but there was a $23 million figure in there. There was also some estimates on renovations that included an expansion of the building. But really what we're looking for right now from the board is some direction if we should be exploring an alternate location or if we should start taking care of some of these issues in the building. Similar to the library discussion we had, we don't want to put hundreds of thousands of dollars into a building that we may be vacating, so.
What's going on with the other side of the building here? Because I know at one time, just for some of the other commissioners, there was DHS occupies 38,000 square feet of this building, give or take.
So as of right now, they have not notified us of their intent to leave. So it is an automatic 5-year renewal of their lease. However, Dina has been in contact with the Department of Management and Budget, and they had indicated that they are reviewing all of their leases statewide. You know, what that means, we don't know, because they've done that numerous times over the years. So I can tell you that their employees are not working in the building. They are all still remote on any given day. There's probably 3 or 4 state employees in that whole side of the building.
And originally, there's been conversations, you know, about the health department over the years, and it was always kind of, let's see what happens next door, you know, because if they pulled out, that would obviously have availability on space. No different than our library. I thought I had a deal put together with the college. We were going down that path, and that didn't happen. So we had to revisit that. I would think just looking at some alternative spaces potential, you know, where can you go? Like I said, the new building thing, if it's 23 million, it's probably 35 after what I just saw at the bid openings. I mean, it was just completely blew me away.
I got at least a couple questions. Whether it's next door, how much square footage is next door?
Yeah, 38, 35, I'm not sure the exact, somewhere in that ballpark.
Would that be sufficient for you guys? On just the initial, you don't have to commit to nothing. Would that be a good location?
It depends on the configuration. See, we have 31 now, and it's not near enough, but the
Right.
configuration of that building is crazy with the multiple layers.
Well, if you gave you storage and stuff, if you're at 38,
Yeah, if we had, say, you know, additional storage in this building or whatever, if we didn't have to use that 31,000 square foot for storage and it was configured properly, it might work. Sure.
okay.
We got-
Just for,
We got a big basement in this building.
Yeah.
if you've ever been down
yeah, I
there.
guess there's some of the death records are downstairs. I think I was talking to Bob Wiley, and some of the records for that are downstairs. If we did not renew the lease, either side can opt out of the lease, correct?
No, the county has no out in the lease, only the state.
Okay.
To what date?
It would be 5 more years,
So in 5 more years,
and that's correct, in 5 more years, then
Kicking the
it's
curve.
done. But they can renew the 5 years at their sole option, and we have no ability to get out of the lease.
Karen, my
as it's
question
written.
is, at some point, does the county obtain the ability to terminate the lease? No? In
No.
perpetuity?
Well, once it ends in 5 years, we
Okay,
can.
5 years. So in
Yes.
5 years, we could say, look at this and say, do some things with the building over on the current health department building to keep it, roof not leaking and whatever other things might be happening. And then we could move them into this other area at our election in 5 years, if we so choose.
That's correct.
Thank you.
That looking, if it's a 30 million in consideration, whatever, we have to take care of it one way or the other. I agree with Carrie on her initial that I would not be in favor of throwing a lot of money in that old of a building, because at some point, you're still gonna come here with the same question, and then the price is, if it's 30 million now, it might end up 50 million, you know, 10 years down the road. So I'd rather get a facility, my initial thought would be to get a facility that would last for years to come, or decades.
What's the revenue stream from the rental to the state? Any idea off the top of your head? That's a hard question, I know.
Dina knows. 46,000 a month.
Thank you.
Did that go down after they paid off it was a fluctuating deal? Because this building is now paid for. Before they were paying us more money than when
Correct.
we got paid off on this, then it.
Yeah, once the bond was paid off, the lease payment did go down.
So it's roughly $1.20 per square foot per month that they're getting the, that's way below standards.
It's 46 grand a month.
Right, but it's 38,000, so at that, it's roughly $1.20 in industry standards, because I can lease my own buildings to myself, which I do, and that's way below industry standards. $1.20 per square foot? Well, we can look into that, but that seems pretty low right now.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, it's the lease we inherited.
Liz, is there any way of breaking the office into, you know, if you could move an admin and keep the services there and then retrofit that building, at least for a temporary period?
Sure. I mean, I think anything's right, we prefer
Right.
for our administration team to be on site and to be right there for direction, but can we move around? Sure. Is there the ability to, we've kind of talked about being in different parts of the county, right? Can we reduce our footprint in Port Huron a little bit and then maybe be out in, out towards Capac Yale, down Algonac Marine City, and smaller buildings, that's always an option as well. But we did look at numbers, and I did give those to Carrie, but primarily the individuals that we service walking in the building, right, are a 48060 zip code. Not to say that that wouldn't increase if we were in other areas to get some more services out in those areas.
It would make sense for satellite areas to be like our environmental health division. They take up a whole position in the building. And other than food service, most of their work is in the rural areas, well, septics and soil erosion type issues. So we could have a smaller footprint for that group with our food inspectors being locally, and some of the more field work could be located somewhere else out in the county. There's plenty of options to move us around.
And I'll just make it funny, so potentially you could take over the old Park and Rec offices downstairs for that purpose. Because those are empty, aren't they?
Yep, that's correct. We do have an empty suite downstairs.
Do we have any other open areas right now in the county?
We will have the old day treatment facility, and that is approximately 6,500 square feet. That will be available once that transition is complete of the day treatment program moving into the old juvenile facility.
So when Carrie and I talked earlier this week, I think one of the questions I had was between all of the facilities and then specific to the health department, what departments could be moved around, or I don't know if it's really inefficient to not have your whole team together, or if it makes sense to spread out. And I think Greg had provided zip code numbers to me probably 6 months ago now, but that was my other question, was if we had satellite offices and we can provide that service in more places, but then what are the unintended consequences of having satellites? Does that add, are you talking about more staff or more, supervisory on level? So those are the things that I don't know, but.
The current environment makes it much easier for us to do that remotely because of the technology that we have now. There is not much that I can't do remotely that I can do at the office. So I think connectivity is much more feasible to do that now than it was even a couple of years ago.
And then having some kind of inventory of spaces that we have available, who you would need to be in one spot, who could go somewhere else, I think is a good, because there's no question that the building needs a complete, to be gone. And honestly, like several of our facilities. So I think as this particular meeting goes on, we're going to hear that there are a lot of our facilities that need an awful lot of attention. This one with the study and then finding out who maybe could move where. It would be wonderful if we could get something from the state sooner rather than later, being that they're not here. I think that's the most frustrating part. It's just empty space when we have needs for people. So I think I would be really interested in finding out more of which, based on if the square footages within this are still pretty accurate, for each department, and then plug that into where there are empty spaces, and if it makes sense for, education or soil erosion to be somewhere else.
Yeah, when we did this study, the square footage that's put out there is not for what we need currently. We did figure in some growth for over the next 10 years. So that square footage number is a future estimate for that.
Okay.
And we can look at ourselves with our leadership team, how it looks if part of maybe WIC staff is out. Our maternal infant health visiting nurses who really cover different areas of the county. Perhaps they don't base in at our main office, but we can look in addition to environmental health staff, what that looks like, or our business office staff. Our finance department has grown with billing, purchasing, all of that. They could be in a different location as well. Okay.
But it's essential to keep that location open because it's in the center of a large service area, though, isn't it? We need we need to be in that location, or in that area.
In that area.
Fairly close.
I would prefer, right, I think with our services, we like that area, It's on a bus line. I think there are different things for transportation and accessibility that need to be there, no matter where you're at. You know, you could expand out a little bit, for sure, but I wouldn't tuck us up in Birchville, like something
Right.
like that, right? But certainly, where we are up until, I guess, you know, even in this area, out of ways township-wise, but your Port Huron Township, your Kimball Township, those were the highest number of zip codes being seen in the building.
I have a question. Do we own the lot next door to that building, to the parking lot, kind of where the container is?
Yes, that grassy area is part of our lot on the other side of the parking lot.
So if there's a need for additional space to put trailers and preparedness items, and if that was a discussion to build a storage facility, then couldn't you just put some suites on additional to that to move maybe a couple of the offices over that do the field work as well, and then you're still kind of on the same
I mean, I
area?
think that's a
I think
possibility.
it's a possibility,
Yeah.
right, is what I was gonna
But
say.
it doesn't solve the issue of the problem with the
The ADA
building.
stuff?
Yeah.
Well, I know, and I did a tour yesterday, and I walked with the maintenance guy, and he's very nice. And so he did kind of give me his small list, because, I mean, you got good bones there. I mean, it's really not a bad building. I mean, it's structurally pretty sound. But it does have some cosmetic upgrades, which is nice, so it kind of doesn't make it look outdated or anything, but for the most part, I didn't think it was that bad, really. To do some ADA upgrades would probably be the first thing, and he talked about ceiling tiles and lighting and maybe a generator in,
Safety.
Yeah, so we've done our best to keep that building
Right.
looking.
No, it
as
looks great.
as it can.
It looks
And
great.
like, when I first came up here, I said, you know, cosmetically, you can walk through it, and it looks pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
The functionality is just not there whatsoever. And there are still some mechanical issues. And, you know, the zones of that building are crazy, so
Mm-hmm.
you can go down in an environmental health area, and you feel like you're in a sauna, you feel like you're sweating, and then you can come up to my area and have to wear a coat. And because it's 4 different zones, there's 4 different heating units, they're single pane, or pane non-insulated glass in all the windows, so you can keep your lunch cold in the winter without a refrigerator, you just set it on the windowsill. So there are still plenty of things beyond cosmetics that are really deficient in that building.
Thank you for coming. I know,
Oh,
he did
no.
mention you came, so we appreciate you coming over for
oh,
sure.
thanks.
Um,
It's nice.
Yeah, thanks.
I'll have just one more question, because there are going to be others, but is there any part of the health department's budget that contributes to capital improvements?
They do have some fund balance that could go towards improvements to the building.
Because we need to have that included in our discussion. If you got, whatever you have there, if we're going to assist potentially moving or upgrading your facilities, like your water, I'll get it wrong, the ones that check the water throughout the county and the septic and that kind of stuff, they take up an office up down there. They could be remote someplace also. And that'd free up, a couple thousand square feet for you, I think. And I'm done.
A couple questions. This report was authored by the health department, correct?
Well, we hired a consultant to do it.
Okay.
We just-
Is that the, who's the consultant? Is that Phoenix Contracting?
It was, A3C was a consulting firm out of Ann Arbor.
So they came in and
Why-
interviewed all of the leadership staff and then created.
Okay,
a
I was looking for a sign-off on the executive summary piece of it, and I didn't see a name on it. I was wondering who authored this. So it's authored by a company that was selected by the health department.
Yeah, an RFP was put out, and so we went through all the bids and selected that.
Was that, Carrie, was that done through your office, that you gave that to them to do that, or how does that work? Why wouldn't we have done that ourselves?
Well, we would have needed a consultant to do the building assessment and the
Right.
space needs assessment. And this was discussed last year, and we felt that it was time to go through and evaluate that building. So yes, administration was involved in the
So
RFP
this
process.
board had a hand in selecting the consultant.
Yes, this board approved the contract.
All right. And, looking at, there's on page 572, this A-share table, existing equipment life expectancy. It looked like it had a substantial life expectancy. Can you comment on what that's all about? talked about 18 years, 30 years, 25 years on various items that have a life expectancy. I'm assuming that's on the building as it now sits.
That is correct. They're looking at what they feel is the expected life expectancy and where we're at with the life of those type of units and things in that building as they exist.
I was over when I got on the board, and I came over and saw Liz with some issues on some of the things going on, and I did notice it's a bit chopped up, it's a bit odd, you know, like a habit trail to go in there and get up and down and move around. So I can see that piece of it, but based on some of the stuff that came up here today, I guess to give Carrie an idea where I would stand on it, I'm always a fix it before you replace it kind of person, and I try and fix it early and fix it right so it doesn't turn into a piece of garbage. That's what you do on the farm, that's what I try to do with stuff. So here, this building, as Joy pointed out, it's got good bones, but it's not a good building. I agree, it's not a good building functionality-wise, and I mean, I got kind of turned around just going up and around the corner and finding Liz tucked in the back corner. So, you know, I'd be interested I would really be interested in seeing what we could do about, if Dave's right, that the market value on the square footage for that revenue piece is low, in a 5-year deal, take a look at this and do what you can for a few years and get them over here and maybe find a way to rent to ourselves.
I just did the math on that. So it's $46,000 a month times 12 months, $552,000 divided by 38,000 square foot. It's $14.50 is what they pay us.
All right.
So I just want to be clear on that.
Okay, so Dave was talking so much a
Or
month.
the $1.21 per month, per square foot,
Okay.
per month. That's where you get the 46,000, and that's what the industry standard, I know about that one, in being in manufacturing, what you can charge back in rent, the accounting end of it is what you can actually charge per monthly status. What I go, it's $3.50 for a manufacturing plant.
Well, rather than argue about the two numbers, my point is just being that I would like to look at that. I would be, if you need to cite something like a health department, you need to do it. But I would need to know more about, you know, what options there are. And in this cost issue, they've got, it looked like on page, section 1, page 2, it talked about update cost, $17,719,352, but new build, 52,592 square feet was $15 million. It was less money. So it's like, I was surprised at that. And so in today's, I know a little bit about what's going on with construction and, you know, housing and some of that and the cost of material and labor. So I would just want to be real sure that that was a spot on estimate. And, you know, if you can build cheaper than repair, well, that's kind of a no-brainer. You build, right? But I don't know what needs to be really done on this study. I couldn't discern from that. A lot of stuff is useful. Does it have to be fixed now? It's got useful life. I mean, to go through and just freshen the whole thing up, yeah, 17 million, but can you do certain pieces of it and get it down the road a ways and maybe look at some other facility, this night treatment program, whatever, you know, just don't just run out and build. That's my feeling.
Commissioner, that remodel cost included a demo of the south annex and a rebuild of larger square footage footprint attached to this building. So it
And
wasn't just a complete remodel, it was also demo and construction.
Even if it was, that part wouldn't have made a difference to me. It's just numbers, right? Whether it's a demo or whatever it is, or whatever they're doing to it, new window glazing or whatever they're doing, if the build is cheaper than the rehab, okay, you know, you'll get your numbers down, right, and look at it. So is this something, Carrie, you're looking at? I mean, you're talking, you know, you had raised this as an issue because it's something you're thinking we should look at or ask the board we should look at now, or should we wait, or what are you looking for from us?
Well, I guess I'm looking for direction because we would like to, you know, start doing some repairs, perhaps redo that parking lot. But before we invest a lot of money in that facility, I guess we want to know where the board's at. You know, if the board's preference is that we renovate and bring that facility, you know, up to code and current ADA standards, then we can go down that road. But if you'd like us to explore other options, I'm not sure that, especially in this climate, a new construction would be a good idea. But is there perhaps another vacant building that could suit our purpose, that could be renovated cheaper than our existing building?
What's your recommendation as administrator? Do you feel comfortable saying what you think is the smart way to do it, or would it not really?
Well, ideally, I would love to move them to the other half of this building and their square footage needs. You know, a lot of space could be shared here. We have a lot of conference room space. We have a lot of meeting space that come off their
That's
square
un- that's
footage because it could
underutilized
be
maybe, and that
used.
would fill that
That's
space up.
correct.
You start talking about meeting space, you know, we got meeting rooms, there's a lot of duplication that you wouldn't need in that. So when you're saying, obviously 51,000 storage, the basement's got a ton of room. You got-
Our basement's full.
It's got exercise.
Just I
equipment,
haven't
yeah.
been down there in a while.
Well, see, to me,
All right.
that's a smart way to look at it. Say, okay, there's an issue I hadn't thought about. If you bring somebody over, now you've got shared space and shared staffing issues and some of that. Factor all that in, it just seems like a smarter way to do it than just say, okay, go build. I mean, I don't like to just go build.
So I agree, I don't think that we need to go build, but the space that they're in is not functional, and
I
I
agree.
don't want to put a ton of money into it to force a square peg in a round
No,
hole, or
but
whatever
I
that
would
phrase is. So I would like to see us look at other property that might be available, whether it's in this building or for sale or lease. We have the money right now to purchase a property, and maybe that's where we spend some of the ARPA funding, so that they don't have a high cost of the property, it would just be renovation.
Can you approach this in a way that the monies you put in to, say, get by for a bit, you're gonna recoup if you sell it? I mean, once they're out, you're gonna sell it or repurpose it, or what, you know? It's not wasted money if you're doing some things to the building that make it more valuable. I would think you could recoup that value.
It would be my recommendation that we sell that property. I don't see that we would have another use for it if the health department did leave.
But I see Commissioner's point that if we put some upgrades into the existing, would help the marketability of that building to even offload it afterward. You know, like working on some of the parking lots and the ADA compliance.
The ADA compliant thing it's a huge issue. I mean, I'm there every month at those board meetings, and
It's a legal issue, too.
How do
it's
we
huge.
get by
It's a
the
huge
ADA?
issue.
How did we get by ADA
Well,
this
don't
long?
speak too close into the microphone, they'll find out and ding us. But, so I guess if we're gonna invest some money into it to Band-Aid it by until we figure out what we're gonna do in the next year to 5 years, I guess I would need to know what those emergent projects are. How do we get it ADA? How do we get you another ADA bathroom in a place that the public is in? Versus outside of a conference room. And the asphalt in the driveway, I don't want to lose my little car in that pothole either.
So I do want to address the ADA issue. So we are legally in compliance. If we do have an individual that needs assistance, we do have a way to assist them. We can provide them service. You know, if they had to go to the ground floor, we can make accommodations to meet with them on a floor. So it is in legal compliance. However, it is not ideal, especially, you know, as Greg mentioned, for people with strollers, perhaps someone in a wheelchair, it is very inconvenient.
But is there something we can do for them now to alleviate some of your overcrowding? Is there things we can do in weeks instead of months and years to give them more space?
You know, certainly, myself, administration can meet with the health department administration, and we can come back to the board with a list or a proposal of what we think would be the top priorities to get addressed now. And then perhaps a plan on what it looks like in the future if the board would like to consider the other half of this building. And we will continue to work with the state to see if there is any movement there. Or perhaps we can reach out to them and let them know that we do have an interest in taking back that space if they would be willing to vacate.
When I was on the board 10 years ago, there was chat about a new library, a new health department. It's always been, those things are always helpful.
Yeah.
And just if we can look at it in a way, I like the idea of getting it under our own roof, I really do. But if that's not something that's viable, so be it, if you can make more money running it to the state. But, you know, you take care of your own business, we have that need, we have the space need, do it ourselves and be self-sufficient.
I think the biggest issue with this building is that it might be fine for certain users. The health department, though, in particular, is not the right user for that floor plan because of your demographic. So it just does, a lot of different offices maybe could be there, but I don't think the health department is really one of them.
Yeah, I feel like we've outgrown it, and I think services too, right? We, during COVID, to do off-site testing and have someone drop just a COVID test. We don't even have that ability. Drop a water sample, that kind of thing, or just the convenience of more modern things that we've seen happen over the last 20 years we don't have. Would make things more efficient for the public and our staff.
So a question on monies, is there not, I mean, I know a lot of different, they put a lot of money into a lot of different things. Is there monies for health department buildings, rehab, you know, so on and so forth? Have you seen that come across your?
What's the funding source?
So there are funds under ARPA, or you can use ARPA for what they call a community health center. In sense, you know, portions of our building would be considered a community health center because they see patients, they have patient care. You know, some of the other divisions like administration, business office, environmental health wouldn't necessarily qualify. So I don't see ARPA as being a sole fund for this project. However, I do believe portions of the project would be eligible for ARPA funding.
Non-ARPA monies, like you
Any
said.
grants coming across, anything,
There's-
SEMCOG or any of the other?
There's
Opi-
typically
opi-
not a lot of
opioid
grants
money?
for building, just straight buildings.
Is opioid settlement money coming our way? I've been hearing about that. I don't know what's going on with
So that has to be used for very specific purposes of prevention and treatment and education.
like at the health department?
I think that would be a stretch.
Really?
The building part.
It'd be a nice fit.
Right, right. So
Okay.
the issue though with ARPA funds is that if a decision needs to be made soon because the project has to be underway by the end of next year.
That is correct. So,
And this project fits the bucket very, I mean, very neatly, you know, parts of it, the public safety, public health piece. So, you know, I don't know if the next step is to, you know, kind of evaluate where people go, what we have now, if the goal is that this is the department that goes next door, because I think we've talked about other departments that need, you know, space. So I feel like we kind of need to reevaluate how things operate post-pandemic, because remote work has changed, maybe where a health department needs to be from a satellite office standpoint has changed, and see where the needs are, what buildings we currently have, because if it ultimately we sell this building, then you don't want to completely renovate the inside, but who fits best where with what we have, and then that would tell us if we need to either, you know, purchase a new building potentially, like to your point, with another site, but somewhere within, within, you know, where you feel like you need to be
In a time.
for service in a time, in a
We've got
month.
to get this, I mean, you can't just keep dragging this thing.
No.
On the funding, on the funding source issue, my position has always been, the township's got 30 plus or minus $1 million directly, townships, municipalities, that money went directly to them. The county picked up 30 plus or minus $1 million to us. We carved out lost revenue, we spent down about 10, or however we did that. There was about 20 or so left, and there was some talk about 26 Mile Road, sending a large chunk to one township. I see that moving. There's been a lot of public input and a lot of discussion on the board. I see that moving in a different direction. I wanted to, if it goes that way, the 4 commissioners that might support that, send that money there. You know, I wanted to kind of divide it up amongst the districts, because the county has needs. I want to carve out some money for the county. Last time we were here, you said there's 44 million or so on the capital improvement. Maybe carve out 5 to 7. You were thinking 7. I'm thinking maybe I'm a little bit cheap. Okay, carve out maybe 5. But in that regard, carve out some for the county. I think it's fair. That would bring us up to about half spent on the county, and then the other half divided amongst the districts for them to submit for proposals. If they don't find a viable proposal, because it's not revenue, lost revenue anymore. Now it's going to be specific treasury regulation authorized, subject to recoupment, and we talked about a contract for recoupment. If they submit for something and get it and we approve it and there's recoupment, they pay that back, not us. Get all that in place. If they can't come up with projects that meet that, and there's some argument about ditching versus something else, I don't want to get into that piece of it, because I'm going to trust you and Gary Fletcher on what qualifies for those ARPA funds to be spent on, but give the townships a chance to take whatever their division is. If they can't do it within 30, 60, 90 days, whatever it is, one more shot to get a project that's viable. And if it doesn't, then we got to move it to something else, because there's talk on the federal level about clawback. It's been now for 30 days. I've listened a little bit about clawing some money back. They're thinking maybe they sent too much money out under COVID relief. You know, if we don't do something with this, if we sit around and wring our hands and don't do anything, we could have problems. So that's my 2 cents.
Let's jump into the, thank you guys. Let me get off on the health department. ARPA funds discussion.
I just did it. I'm done.
Carrie had, at the last meeting we had talked about, and she had talked about what her wish list is, I guess.
Well, so in your packets is the projects that are in the county's current capital improvement plan, as well as the county's mini capital improvement plan. And what I had provided to you last time went through and reviewed each project as to which already have a funding source, which would be eligible to be paid under the different buckets. So outside of the health department building, there is approximately $7 million worth of projects that would be ARPA eligible. Parts of them include some.
You want to just run through it, start from the top and explain them a little bit?
Every project?
Well, even just a brief Cliff Note version,
Okay.
you know.
So there was a dispatch project, I believe. We have been talking about that Birchville Tower site for quite some time. We're not necessarily sure if, you know, that's being evaluated with a smaller fix, but that was a large ticket item. There are several IT projects that would promote remote work environment, upgrade some of our equipment. We have 2 projects at the airport that could fall under the lost revenue portion. They have some equipment that needs to be replaced that has been on the capital improvement for probably 10 years now. And also an upgrade to our fuel services that would allow us to have self-service fuel pumps, which would actually generate revenue for the airport and be less staff time.
So on the airport, because I know we have that's a enterprise fund out there, do they have any money?
No, that fund is at a deficit every year.
Okay.
We do have some parking lot projects. I believe we talked about the roof projects. We are, you know, moving forward with the library roof to get, you know, that RFP developed. We don't have pricing in.
But the library roof would come out of the library millage.
Typically, historically, the structurer of that building has been paid by the county, and it gets charged back through cost allocation. The physical, like roof, the heating, cooling, that has all been funded by the county and not the millage historically. We do have water damage in this building that needs attention. There are also some sheriff department projects for radio replacements. There, if I look at the mini CIP, there are more IT-related projects. The jail also had some pieces of equipment that they are in need of. The sheriff's office has a storage building on there and some office reconstruction within their facility. A couple other buildings and grounds for some HVAC upgrades and various repairs, and some office construction in district court probation. And some of these fall under lost revenue and some do fit the public health bucket. And the estimates on these is approximately $7 million, but when items are put in the CIP, a lot of times it is just an estimate, so we won't really know what those costs will be until these items are bid out.
Steve?
I guess on Carrie's presentation, I would expect that whatever amount we determined would be set aside or dedicated to county operations, that then Carrie would come back to us and say, okay, I want this one or that one, or we should do it this way or that way. And then we'd at some point have the oversight with Carrie on how to expend that on county operations. That's kind of how is that kind of how you saw that working? Or just give it to you and give you a checkbook and say, is that right?
Or you could give me the full $7 million so we can do them all, but each individual project would come back to you because they are all contracts that would need to be approved. So if you allocate the $7 million, we could start moving forward with several of them, and as the costs come in, we'll see what we are and aren't able to do.
And we would have discussion and public input on those items as they came up for approval, right? I mean, let's say you got $7 million and you started, so okay, we're going on the road to do these. You'd bring them to the board to say, oh, here's, say, project 1 of 9 or whatever it is. There'd be discussion and that's how we go forward for public input and.
Yeah, that's correct. And, you know, the first item you'll likely see is the library roof repair. And that will come, the RFP will be issued, a recommendation will come, and then it will be there for your consideration.
I have a library board meeting on Tuesday, and I'm almost like 99% positive they're gonna vote to stay where they're at, repair the building. We've done extensive work. We probably looked at 18 different sites over the years and stuff. And like I said, I thought I had the deal with the college worked out, which would have been combining the library with the college and so on and so forth. But the community college opted out of that deal, so it was kind of like,
Union issues too, Jeff, or what was that?
not necessarily that as much as, you know, as simple as that, I don't want to go on my tangent, but I will for a second. As simple as that sounds, right, combining the two services and having one superior service made a lot of sense. When we went out to look at it, there's only like 2 or 3 in the country that had ever even done it. You know, that's kind of those.
Thinking out of the box.
You know, I didn't think it was
I mean,
brain.
good.
Yeah.
Well, it's not being done over, but it sounded like.
Yeah, no, we, you know, and it was a way less expensive option because of facilities that they're in, but it's a dead horse, so that kind of, okay, back to square one. And there again, when we're talking new buildings, you know, 25, 30 million, you know, those types of things, and the library, they don't have, you know, those kind of funds. Even with the recent millage passage and, you know, some of the other things, they don't have that kind of money to make a payment. So hence, I think you will see that moving forward.
Mr. Chair, I got a meeting with the sheriff the other day, and I was just wondering if we could bring Under Sheriff Spatafor up and go over a couple issues that they're having, that we might be able to look at a couple projects that I think would help the county-wide, and he could come up and explain them to us a little bit. One that blows my mind is a boat. I didn't realize we underfunded the Marine Division like we do. We've got some of the most most shoreline mileage. We have more than some portion of states, just in St. Clair County. And we have, it was roughly $250,000 for our.
Only thing I would ever argue with the Sheriff Patrol, which I don't say that they don't, but I'm an avid boater, and I see more Coast Guard, more Border Patrol, more, if you ever did have something bad happen, I guarantee you there are a lot of additional resources that are on the water. And I know there's different things that they do, but there is way more assets on that water than there ever has been in the past.
Exactly, but when we use our dive team, we use our Marine Patrol with the dive team in coordination normally, don't we? Yeah.
We do, and you're right, Sharon. There are more assets on the water, and a lot of that stuff does get deferred back to us. The issue with our boats are they're old. We haven't bought a boat in, I think, 15 years or so. And we have some with the transoms that we're fixing that the motors just will barely even sit on them anymore. So we're getting to the point where the boats are just almost inoperable. Like, we can change the motors, we can fix the engines, but the hulls and everything else that go with them are causing us problems. And even in later today, you'll see a grant proposal for a boat, but that's going to be separate than what we're asking for or put together for a boat here because we need to. And some are safe boats, some are center councils. I mean, we have different style boats and different needs, different aspects for where the water is and different currents and different conditions. So there's different kind of boats that kind of all get wrapped up into what our fleet is.
Get I don't want to call them the hand-me-downs, but when they, you know, get rid of the boats, are you able to pick up some of those boats from the Coast Guard, Border Patrol, any of that?
So I don't know what they do with their old boats, whether they just decommission them or they actually sell them at an auction. They keep their boats for a significant amount of time too. They'll keep those boats 20, 30 years, depending on where they go, or they'll send them down to a different area and recycle them. So trying to get a boat from them is very few and far between. But if you're going to get one, you're going to get one about the same conditions as the ones we have.
But if you have a Sheriff's Marine Division at $250,000 and you have a boat at $351,000, really kind of hard to, I don't even know how you fill the boats with that kind of, you know, man them with that kind of dollar figure, but creative accounting, I guess.
Well, they're expensive. There's no doubt about that. They're expensive to maintain. I've
talked to Dina numerous times, we've talked about how we could try to fund some boats, but I mean, we only have so much resources to draw from, so they're very expensive.
Then you also talked about a barrier project.
So this is something that's not on the CIP because it kind of just came up over the last year, are these big barriers for like parades or carnivals. We had an issue down in Algonac last year where a car actually drove through the midway and another incident where the car actually drove through the parade. We only have so much manpower and so many barriers, but those barriers they could drive around. The barriers that we talked about, you can't drive around those. And they're spaced out a little bit, they're heavy barriers, they're meant to stop a vehicle. They don't move out of the way, they don't run, they're 700 pounds, they're not going anywhere. So if there's an issue, the vehicle gets stopped. I've talked to several other departments throughout the county, we've talked. Everybody seems to think it's a good idea, it's just finding the funding for them and how many do we need. And when we talked about something countywide where we would share these. Like this is something that we could share with all these departments, even fire departments, if they had a scene to block stuff off. So it might not be specific to us, but it will be specific to all these agencies in the county that could potentially use it.
Yeah, I brought it up to the fire chiefs, the downriver fire chiefs this morning, but we got rudely interrupted. So, you also mentioned videos for classrooms.
Yeah, on there is some video stuff for classrooms. We have a couple classrooms down in the jail, high school classrooms, but for some reason they have actually no video in them. And I'm not sure why. There's about 4 or 5 of them. It's an area where the teachers are, where there's staff in there, and they've never actually had video in them. So that's something to look at. I think anything inside that jail should have a video so we can see or record what's going on in there. And for some reason, those areas aren't.
And also you talked about the new radios, and that's on the mini cap, isn't it?
That is on the full CIP.
Full CIP?
Yes.
Okay. And that's coming down from central dispatch. That's
Yeah, so our
converting.
radios have been on the CIP for a couple years. They're end of life. We do send them out. We have a couple areas that will fix them. We just don't know how long that's going to last. Motorola will not support them. There are some places that will make some aftermarket parts, but again, I'm not sure how long that's going to last. Second problem with our radios, they don't have the ability of encryption. So encryption is where the central dispatch, some of these police agencies are moving, and we don't have the capability to do that. We can, there's a small fee to it. I can send the radios out for $500 a piece and get encryption capability. But again, it's like kind of talking about the health department building. You're putting money into something that is not going to last forever. That's the future of our county, and without it, we wouldn't be able to communicate on an encrypted channel with anybody else.
How much do those radios go for now?
Well, the actual handheld radio is not very expensive. It's everything else in the technology that goes into it. So, believe it or not, some of the technology, is a couple $1,000s per radio. But I think the radio costs are around $800 to $8,500 per handheld.
They were 25 when we bought them the first time, 15 years ago.
I'm still using one of the old ones.
Yeah.
It's about 630,000 is the estimate in the CIP for the new radios.
Radios.
Then one last item I wanted to bring up was Guardian RFID, which is a program for documentation for the jail. Because right now we don't document. We do on paper, but we don't digitally document how we feed and put information in about each inmate. This way they can log this in. We can bring it out much easier if you get.
We have some systems that will do a small portion of this. We have an area of the jail where you can type notes on how the inmate's doing. There's no system to say everybody ate. Like they get enough trays and they go around and pass everybody else. This is specific to each individual. It's an app. You can use it on a phone or a computer, and it shows when the inmate ate, when it got its meds, how many times you talked to the individual. And it keeps an order of each individual person that's there. So I can just look a person up and see every contact he's had every single day, instead of going to maybe 3 different things and then calling down to the medical assessment area and a couple different people to figure out, hey, did we do a head count? Who did the head count? When was it done? This is an area that will cover everything all underneath one roof.
And that would help us out for any kind of liability that we can actually get information back to legal staff and say, this has all been done. And try and nip some of the stuff in the bud before it becomes a bigger case or class action.
What I'd like to see happen, Jeff, is whatever amount we determine would go toward operations for the county, that at some point, discussions like this one, we have our director from Parks here, there was a park meeting a while back, and they're talking about $700,000 for the lighthouse. It's a federal lighthouse that needs to be up to certain specs. Can that be used? I talked to Gary, wasn't sure, you know. So there's a lot of gyrations. We have Judge Damon here. He's, maybe he has something to say about some of the courthouse needs. I've talked to Mike McMillan. There's a lot of needs all over, but if we carve some money out and like Carrie's presentation on the capital improvement list is alphabetical. Well, we're not going to go alphabetical. We're going to go somehow. So, and we'll have some discussions amongst ourselves and publicly and whatever to say, here's how we manage our way through it. And then we have more discussion, because I don't know enough about the tower in Birchville or the radio issue or this other issue to say which one is better bang for your buck. And I'll do workshops or whatever it takes, but it would seem that would be the best way to get public input and discussion about how we push this money out, but at least get it dedicated and moving, you know, moving. If we put some out for the townships, get them, say, hey, get your information in, apply, get all that done, you know, get it moving. And then that's my concern, is it's not really moving too fast.
Jeff? I got a couple.
Yes.
And it's easy to pick on Wales because they happen to be here. We got Joe from Casco also. But they have fire contracts, and I did quite a bit of research myself, and I think we all are doing that. And what you were bringing up with the sheriff, they can also do the same thing with the fire departments. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they have to contribute in their contracts and with wherever they have it, with Memphis and Emmett, which I'm familiar with. I'm not sure who you contact with, Joe, but for your fire service. But the requirements on the fire department and EMS have gone much more than it was when I was a township supervisor, and the cost has more than doubled for the contracts that when I was there. They can use the ARPA funds for that. So in regards to what Steve was bringing up, if there is some money that we can potentially have the townships, we got the two supervisors here, they could say, you know, this would greatly assist their fire departments. And potentially, I don't know if you have a contract, I know Ira has a contract with Clay Township that could potentially assist in their sheriff contracts, Fort Gratiot also, that could assist in protection. And I'm fairly certain that's covered in the ARPA rules, that those are usable uses for the funds. So I'd like to have that part of the discussion. I wanted to go back to the health department. With this building here, if the state of Michigan ever leaves, what are we going to do with the building? Because I think it may end up empty. And I'm just saying for consideration, because we're talking about it, if that is a suitable location for our health department, I think we need to at least consider it sooner rather than later, that if we draft a letter, the contract's up in August?
The contract's up in 5 years.
It's current then, so we can't do anything for 5 years with them then.
Only if the state chooses to leave. We cannot
Okay, fair
terminate
enough.
the contract for 5 more years.
Okay, is it possible that we could draft a letter requesting them?
Yeah, we can, well, we have been in regular contact with them to ask their intentions, and they have not been very forthcoming.
Okay, just a consideration, because if that's a usable location for our health department and they would be happy with it, I don't want to end up with an empty half a building.
Did I, maybe I'm
Go ahead.
not paying attention, but I thought earlier, and Liz, you're still here, we talked about keeping the location, or a good portion of it, where they're currently at to serve customers?
It's in
Is
a
that
good lo- it's in a
location,
good
that location area, did we not,
The location area.
Area.
The zip code.
Yeah.
Yes,
but,
but the physical plant, the building, is not ideal long-term for them.
understand, so does this make sense for the health department, this building next door? I thought I kind of heard a,
Based on location, Jeff?
yeah, I kind of heard a no.
I thought that Greg wanted to see, I took that Greg wanted to see the inside of the building so that they could see how it would be configured, because they're only getting like 4,000 or 6,000 more square feet than what they have right now. But like Carrie alluded to, there'd be shared conference room spaces, so that would come out of what they need. But without seeing the inside of it, how would they know?
And the bus line was important there, which is,
On Jeff's
there is a bus
question-
line here.
On Jeff's question about location, Carrie, you had said it serves an underserved area. Is that specific to that part, or is that the county when you said underserved?
It's
population?
specific to their clientele.
But throughout the county, clientele, it's a countywide
That's correct,
clientele
yes,
issue,
throughout the
not-
county.
Okay, so I didn't know if that was a location piece. Thank you.
Because potentially that could save us, like you're saying, 30, 35 million for a new facility if we already have a facility that could be utilized for the county, potentially anyways.
Could be,
just
but
part of
if we're in a 5-year contract and we can't kick them out, right?
Right. But if
what I
we
heard
send them a
earlier.
letter,
Cannot kick them
it
out.
could be potentially a consideration that they would consider, you know, the county needs us. We drafted a very nice letter if we decided to go that route.
Yeah, they've been paying rent for 3 years on a vacant space.
Yeah.
They had too much space to rent? They have space they're not utilizing? Is that-
There's no employees over there. Their employees are all remote.
Oh.
So there may be 4 people in the, working
You
in
know, and
person
the-
on
and
any
the-
given day in
The
that whole
Department,
space.
the Department of Corrections is doing the same thing that was part of the thing with the courthouse. The district court probation staff is in one little area, and the felony probation staff and parole has moved essentially out, and that's where this other line item came in, is they're trying to get that space because it's sitting there with no people, and the other people are cramped, so it's something the state's doing, I guess, as a practice now.
So some of the county projects, I guess, maybe, so where I'm coming from, all of the municipalities combined got over 31 million plus 500 from each of the districts.
Townships and municipalities.
Township, everyone but the county. The county's not in that number, so all of the,
That doesn't include the county's piece.
Correct.
They had their own separate money
yes.
that came in
So
under ARPA.
according to the federal website, all of the cities, villages, and townships combined, it's-
Those that applied, I guess.
every single one did.
Did they all apply,
Yeah.
Carrie? Did they all?
I'm not sure if
I'm
they
not
did
sure.
or not.
There
We're
was
not
a-
tracking that.
There was a
those-
report on there that had the deny, or the opt-out,
Okay,
and there were no St. Clair County ones that opt out, so in the St. Clair County then got 30 million. And then we took 3.5 million and put it back into, so I really feel like when I look at that number of, so we have 900 employees that serve all 162,000 residents in all of these facilities, and some money to do something with, and I feel like we should probably be prioritizing some of those things, that we have this money, maybe these projects are kind of ready to go, but we have, people who work in these buildings here tonight that could maybe say, this is what we need and this is why we need it right now. But, you can't pour from an empty cup, so I feel real strongly that we should look at some of these internal projects now that we're here, prioritize with emergency. I think the courthouse has had to shut down because of elevator problems. I think we have roof problems at least 2. These serve everyone in the county every day. And so I think I'm interested in finding out more on where these projects stand, and what the priorities are for the people who work in these buildings and how they serve the public.
So I have, the confidence in Carrie to be able, if we were to say, okay, we're going to allocate up to $7 million of this money. This is phase 1, right? We're going to be talking about a lot of other stuff. Then they can go out and work on those particular things on her list. Those projects will come back to this board for final approval.
In case we disagree with Carrie.
So I don't think we need to, we have some ARPA funding discussion on the other meeting, but is that something that commissioners?
On my initial, I think I could support the initial 7 million that Carrie Hepton can put a priority basis on, and then we can address the balance of the 23 million. And I think to get on board that, she brought up some very important issues that we can consider, and each one would be brought back to us for approval on its own basis. So, but she could easily take the 7 million and say, okay, here's number 1, 2, 3, 4, however, whatever number she has on that. I don't know if that's the way you're looking at it or not.
I think there's only a balance of 13 million, right? And haven't we allocated 10?
23.
We have 23 million remaining that's unallocated. So with the 7 million, that would allow us to complete the projects on the list before you tonight. We have a very small amount of lost revenue left, and I know there's a lot of projects coming forward. However, they have to fit into one of the buckets because we don't have enough lost revenue left. And I would prefer that we prioritize the lost revenue towards roof replacements. And most of these other projects that I showed as eligible can fall under the public health response. So with 7 million, assuming the costs come in correctly, we would be able to take care of everything that is blue and green on this list.
Then there could be some
Outside of
other,
the health department building,
Then
that
there
does
could
not
be some-
include any of that.
then there could be some other projects that we would look at, sheriff's department stuff. I mean, this would be the initial phase one, I guess, of marching orders, you know, for Carrie.
What I would like to see along that line is, yes, say carve out, let's say it's 7, whether it's blue or green lines, I don't want to get into that to dedicate it to that particular distribution at this point, but say, Carrie, we're going to use that for administration, and then the next thing would be, okay, now, are we going to, I know what you have on your list, we have some discussion, if we need to modify that or not. I'm going to tend to try and support what you want because you're our administrator. I think that would give me the sense that we could then talk about other needs that we might not have considered in balance with what, you know, she has on her list, and it gives us some flexibility rather than just pigeonhole it into red and green or red and blue or whatever it is, 7 million to be done.
Well, the categories are important because that corresponds to the different buckets you're allowed
Okay.
to spend under ARPA funding. So it's not a priority, it's an eligibility.
Well, I guess my point though is that if there's something else out there that's eligible we haven't considered, we want to tweak it, we could maybe do that. I'm not saying we need to do that, but
I guess what I would like direction from the board is if 7 million is the number, I would like to go forward with the projects that are on this current list, but I don't want staff to start working on RFPs and going through the process if the board is not going to support these projects or if they want to go in a different direction.
so you need that.
Rather know that now.
You need
We
that
need
in
to
order
address
move it
that
along.
at the committee meeting, because would you want a motion tonight potentially?
I would prefer a motion tonight, but it would be more appropriate during your committee meeting than the workshop.
One question on that 7 million, does that count?
Actually, the internal ARPA projects is on our new business.
I'd like to have
Yes.
it in written form at a committee, get that language down, spot on, you know, to pass the motion and pass on it.
Didn't we do that at the last committee meeting? Or was it just to discuss tonight?
The last meeting at committee, it was just the projects, it was discussion points.
Yeah.
Just because this is the first time the board has seen these two lists organized in this fashion.
How would you like us to handle it, Carrie? Would you like to send it to the committee meeting next month?
It's already
Or-
been discussed at committee and now a workshop, so I'm not sure
Yeah,
what
okay.
further discussion you want. If you do, I would be happy to, I'm just
No,
not sure what else you
just-
want me
it's
to
on
bring
the- It's on
forward.
the agenda this evening.
Right, because we moved it to full board from our last committee meeting.
Well, are we going to
The
tie
workshop
that,
then,
if we move to do that, are we going to tie it into the distribution to the townships? I want it as one piece. I don't want to take a piece here and then, well, maybe we'll do something later on the other stuff. want
I
it
think
all-
we agree on this, right? We don't probably all necessarily agree on how we're going to spend the rest of the balance, which we will continue to have further discussion on that. But if this is something that everybody can agree on, let's move on this.
At 12M, we can address it then. I think that would be proper. When our full board starts at 6 PM, we can address that on 12M with the ARPA internal projects, correct?
Yeah.
I'm okay with that, Jeff. That makes sense.
Jeff, I got one
Yeah.
question. On that 7 million, did that include the mini projects too?
Yes, it did, so
So
it
it
does.
handles all the mini projects and,
That's correct. All of the projects that don't currently have a funding source or a couple of on the mini are projects that have annual ongoing costs. It's a subscription base, so I did not include those since these
Okay.
are one-time funds.
okay.
Is the blues and greens on your list, Carrie? Is that?
That's correct, the blue and the green projects.
I think it's really important that we take care of the county with the county allocated funds. So I like that we're moving forward, at least in a first step, to address the $43 million in needs with the start of 7. Hopefully, we can see more.
I'm in agreement with that.
Anything else? So I will bore you with some 26 Mile Road stuff here.
Is that on the agenda? Wait a minute.
I didn't see it on there.
So, have obviously had lots of meetings on this to talk about a lot of different things. And, you know, originally when we did the layouts, we had different estimates for different pieces and different phases of the project, right? So that was the reason we had to break out on everything. I got out of a LDFA meeting and talk about tax capture, so on and so forth. Originally, you know, we were talking about taking the money, loans, water, sewer, so on and so forth. And currently at this time, what I'm kind of focusing on is the engineering piece of it. The engineering piece, to get it to a shovel-ready status, would be about a year. Ira Township is currently going out for requests for proposals for engineering services. They will actually have that number to us probably within the next 30 days. I imagine it's going to be somewhere in the $1 million price tag. If we did nothing else along that corridor, by having the engineering complete and having it ready to go, if you had a project that located somewhere down there, that you would be able to get sewer and water to that project in a sufficient time. Okay, that's kind of phase one. If you look at the tax capture on the plant in St. Clair, that is $1.5 million a year. So the city of St. Clair is probably putting in $8 to $10 million. They need different things to, you know, water tower, increase water pressure, you know, so on and so forth. So there's a mechanism in place, which is essentially the tax capture from the company that is funding those additional improvements to that area, which is actually improving a lot of other things, water, sewer-wise and that. The second piece of it would be to look at Palms Road. So any of the sewer that would come from Palms down to M29, because it's the main tie-in, I guess, pump lift station or whatever, that would be kind of the phase two piece of it. So Palms down, water, sewer at that corner. And I do have, and I know some of the other townships have sent letters opting out, so on and so forth. I know China did. I have a resolution here from Ira Township that passed 5-0, and they're still looking to, you know, move forward. And
Lynn
all
Township sent me the same thing too. They sent it in by mail. I dropped it off. So
yeah. So then we just received two, and we talked about going out and looking for additional funds and stuff. I shared that with the board.
The federal earmark piece.
Federal earmark piece. This was actually put in Senator Peters' request, and it moved forward to the next step, as did the city of St. Clair got something, city of Marysville. I think you saw a lot of the different projects from McLean's office, so on and so forth. That ask was for $5 million. I've got some meetings with the MEDC coming up and some of the others. So the number that, you know, I'd originally talked about, those were for illustrative to show you, okay, if we do this, it costs this much. If we do that, it costs this much, so on and so forth. But we have really backed down on that because kind of coming out of that meeting and going, okay, if a company locates somewhere down there, it's going to take them a year to build, you know, if not longer. Then you have that time, and then you can create the, you know, LDFA zones, so on and so forth. So the number that the county may ever have to potentially put in this project is way less. So, but we'll know more on that piece of it, July, August, September, whatever, you know, if they can even get it together. I think you're going to see a pretty good budget battle and everything going on, so these projects could get shelved. At least if we can accomplish the engineering portion of it, because it's the old proverbial shovel-ready project. We have all heard that. You know, do you have a project shovel-ready, ready to submit? If we can get it to that point, then that would take a, you know, year's worth of process off. So that's kind of my little update. More to come. Things can always change, you know, so on and so forth. So, but that's where we are as of today.
I sense from that, Jeff, you know, I've been on the board since January, and what got, I think, a lot of the public interested is some of the talk about 14.3 million going to one township and some of that. So, I mean, I appreciate the fact that you look at this and listen to what's been presented, and it can be a bit flexible. You know, if you're talking about now putting $1 million of ARPA money towards engineering, I would think that could be part of a discussion about this push down to the townships. Because I'm a county commissioner, but I don't represent, I represent every citizen, but the townships, Dave Rushing, you know, the people that might support that, particularly to that area, those monies could be then allocated as part of the distribution to those townships within those districts. And maybe those commissioners could work that out with, assuming that the public wants it, right? That's kind of how I would see that happening. See, I don't know if that's in line with what you're thinking or not.
I haven't, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, we talked about commission districts. Do each commissioners, you know, get X amount of dollars to spend in their districts? I know there's eligible expenses. I don't necessarily like, I think road and ditching and those types of things. I don't necessarily know that.
Well, they
under
got
the
a
ARPA
ruling,
that they-
and I don't want to get into a big discussion, but there's a ruling from the federal government on the transportation, and it's section 602, but it does. Government services can include, but are not limited to, maintenance or pay-go funded building or of infrastructure, including roads, and that was by the federal government. And it's another discussion we can have, but you have a county down in Ohio, Richland County, that the entire Board of Commissioners approved monies to improve the roads down there. Then you have the entire state of Pennsylvania, where the supervisors have done the same thing. The entire state of Pennsylvania, the supervisors for the townships have done that and forwarded that to the federal government, potentially. But, you know, it has to be approved use. We'll rely on Kerry and whatever the uses are. I just did the math, just for discussion. There's $2 million left for each district. Iris Township share of that would be right at $470,000. If they wanted to use it for that engineering cost, you said it's $500,000. It was forecast at $750,000.
Probably closer to $1 million.
Yeah. So if it's
We'll know
million,
more
but
sooner than later.
they'd be getting $470,000 if they wanted to use that. Approximately 24 years ago, IRU was given $400,000, and I think they've got, what, 150 left to pay back? They pay back roughly $30,000 a year?
That's correct.
Okay. They still have $150,000. I'm sure every municipality within St. Clair County, if they were given the option to have a $400,000 loan, they would jump on it too. And I think that's what Steve might be relaying to. When we start pigeonholing particular county or townships and municipalities, $1 million, that's a gift to Ira Township. And this isn't a payback loan this time. This would be a $1 million gift, because we're not contracting with PCE, Ira Township is.
Ira Township, I would try to wrap, though, the payback. I've always been adamant about the payback. I got to figure that piece of it out, and I haven't got there yet. Because we've been talking a lot of different scope and so on and so forth, you know.
And I think $460,000 or $470,000 dollars would go a long way to helping that. But you see, one of the townships down there, and you read the resolution from China that just passed, I think 3 days ago, they opted out of the 26-mile road corridor. To do this.
We were never putting water and sewer down to China.
Right.
I mean, just
It's still part of the
focus area.
corridor, and they're not supportive, so at some point it might be. But, you know, as things expand, you got phase 1, phase 2, and the money's included there. And I'm going to ask Joe again, don't give me an answer tonight, but I still would like your board's position where you stand on this. If you're for it, please have your board forward a resolution that you do support 26-mile road and the funding necessary to go forward with it, or do like many other townships have done, and make a resolution that you're
Well,
not.
the resolution that I are getting, I oppose 14.6 million. I oppose,
They're all
you
the
know,
same. They look all the
31
same.
million, you know, yeah, no, so I've gotten up things, but the numbers, this has been discussion, overall cost estimates of what we were talking about doing. Because the first thing anybody would have asked me is, hey, how much does this cost, right? So I thought the engineers did a pretty good job of breaking it down in all the different phases. If you extend the water line here, if you do this, if you do that, you know, I think there's other buckets of money after meeting with our federal people and some of the rural things, you know. I think there's some other opportunities down there to fill in additional gaps.
Wasn't China Township one of the townships that were going to be in a zone where all the zoning, they would be working together to where all those townships down there would have consistent zoning? And now that China has opted out of that, they don't want to be part of it, that's one of the 4 townships, correct?
It's one of the 4 townships, but the water proposal, it was always dealing, with IRA.
But if they don't support 26 Mile Road and potentially the road, and this is a long discussion and see where we go, if IRA wants to take the money that potentially they would get and use it for their own engineering cost, that's their choice, and they get to do that like any other municipality, if they end up getting any monies at all. But, I think that would be a strong consideration, and if you, representing your district, wanted to assist in that and say, okay, whatever this, I'm going to send $100,000 to help get it to the $1 million to get the engineering. That would be your choice as representing your district. Same thing with Dave or Joy or any one of us, if we wanted to assist to get to the $1 million to cover the engineering cost. I'm telling you right now that I would support the $470,000 that I would get. If they get that, they can put that there, and that's the biggest chunk. So that's almost, well, that's 47% of the total. If 53% is covered by the other 6 commissioners, then you got your $1 million. Or if potentially IRA has any monies, and you and I have talked before that when we were in the meetings, potentially even forgiving the $150,000 that they currently owe the county could go forward towards that.
So I feel like we're way out of our lane when we start talking zoning. I mean, if it's something that a municipality wants help with because we have a professional staff of planners, I think that's fine. But when we start talking about what people can do with their land, it's not our place. So the Zoning Enabling Act gives local control, that's who should have it. So when we look at it, it's does this municipality need and want sewer? Can we use it as a loan? So I'll tell you, my understanding from the beginning has not been to just gift the money. It has not been to, from my perspective, it's sewer that is going to impact residential, it's going to impact industrial, it's going to impact farmland and be in, if those communities want it. If the communities don't want it, then there's no reason for me to support it. But when we start talking about zoning, and I think I get probably a little protective because I wouldn't want any county or state board to tell me what I could put on my property. And so I think, you know, as long as we're talking about the same thing, do these communities want help? So when we were talking about it in the very beginning, and it was a loan that could turn into something revolving, so then when Birchville had an issue, or Fort Gratiot, or whomever, you could pull from that and make that money last longer. I was totally for that. I think it's changed significantly. I don't know that we can have the money draw out that far now. But we also have a lot of internal projects, and there are a lot of other mechanisms to get some of these things in. Congresswoman McLean's office did put forward in appropriations $2.8 million for Birchville's water. So, you know, that's going to get them way closer to the property line. So that's, you know, so there are other mechanisms as well.
Jeff's working on that, but if it was an actual $1 million loan to Ira Township, at the current rate they're paying us back the other one, that's $30,000. That's over 30-year payback. I don't think that's allowable under the ARPA funds.
I don't think $1 million is allowable to loan.
We talk about the loan, the intent was never to, the payback comes off industry, right, at the end of the day.
And that's, you're going to work on that.
And the other thing too, I want to be clear on, this isn't a special assessment district where, you know, I don't even, what is it, 5149, you pass the special assessment district, everybody's got to pay for it. That, I was never proposing, you know, that piece of it. I was proposing to assist money for IRA for, you know, and they want development down there, and some others don't. And I don't want to put Joe's words in his mouth, but I've been in meetings. I think you have an industrial zone that is zoned industrial, right? That doesn't have, you know, water and sewer there. So there's areas that have particular zoning and stuff. And,
well, Liz brought that up right when she came up here, and she spoke briefly about 2 minutes, that she does not want us getting in townships, business, and zoning. We have no place to be in there.
Sewer is
to assist them with Dave Struck and to assist them getting in, like, which they were talking about. That's why I brought up zoning for the 11 miles, half a mile off the center line of the road, and to address that where businesses, if they determine to come to 26 Mile Road, at least they're working under the same guidelines for all the townships on that 26-mile corridor. And that was a consideration. They're going to be working with the master plan. I believe Casco currently is working with Dave Struck's office for their master plan. But that's a consideration that those will have to do. But if we're going to be allocating money down there, whatever amount it is, I think that they need to be like minds together to where if we're going to be allocating funds to assist that area, neighbors need to be neighbors and work together. We currently have a resolution stating from China that they don't want part of this, and that's 25% of the 4.
And it was never proposed to go to them either, in the water and sewer. So you're not going to get, you know, probably everybody on the same page, right? I mean, it would be wishful thinking to think if you could. Obviously, it's not. You know, China passed it. I mean, there's just certain, I'm not sure where Cotterville's, you know, in the cards. I know right now that IRA, you know, they have large tracts of land. They can do some things there. They want it. You know, I've got resolutions. I got 21 letters of support so far from businesses. I'll probably get another 21. And so, yeah.
Yes. I like the direction it's going, Jeff. I mean, if we have a consensus to carve out some operations money for county, according to what's been presented, I'm good with that. It was 23 million, you carve out 7, that leaves 16. You divide that amongst 6 districts, it might be 252.6 million or something. And we'll have that discussion then. I just want to see it blended out evenly, and then the commissioners can get together or not get together on, you know, putting stuff together for 26 Mile Road or whatever things they want to do in conjunction with their townships and municipalities. And I just think that's a fair way to do it. But I also, you know, I've looked at the Treasury regulations. They're rather mind-numbing. They're not easy to read or follow. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that. I think people are going to have a surprise at what you can't use that money for. It's not just like free money for everything. They've got to fit it into buckets. And I'm concerned that our administrator is going to be overwhelmed with 6 districts, all these townships.
7.
Or 7, I'm sorry, 7, I'm sorry, yeah, 7 districts. I wasn't counting your district. 7 districts, you know, in the county, you know, well, she needs some help to manage that because that's going to be a ton of work. And I don't, you know, it's difficult work. It's not easy. So I like the direction it's going. That's, if I understand you correctly, there's no longer this fervor about 14.3 or 6 down to one thing and turning it into something that shouldn't be. It's more, maybe do some engineering if the commissioners agree, if you have sufficient support and some money from the remaining ARPA.
I'm going to continue to hit the street. I mean, I've already talked to, you know, Senator Hertel represent that area, some of the others, you know, some of the other budgetary, other pockets of money, you know, trying to bring that number down as much, you know, as possible. And if we can't get the Palms Road even piece done, if you get the engineering complete and you have that engineer down there and a company comes, you're going to have X amount of time to be able to get that sewer and water to them. And there again, the tax capture piece of it is, that's how you get paid. And certain, I'm telling you right now, certain industries, IRA, they will accept the Renaissance zone. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Renaissance zones. It's basically a tax-free zone, but the state of Michigan gives you, you know, a big bag of money up front to pay for that. Right.
See, an example,
So,
Jeff, too, like, see, like with broadband, you know, we may not need to carve out ARPA money for broadband. We have the RDOF money going to Mercury, we have BEAD money, Robin Grant money, this other pool of money, you know. So let's say we need to figure out what's going to the townships, and then if 2 or 3 townships think they need to enhance broadband, maybe they'll get together and say, let's put some of that towards that for a more district-specific purpose, or multi-district-specific purpose if it qualifies. Just like what's happening down in Casco and IRA, if people want that and their representatives want to get together and support it, that's how I would see that pushed out. I like that rather than just 4 commissioners saying, hey, we're going to send this over here, and the other one's kind of, you know, not going along.
So, okay.
On the spreadsheet that I think Dina did for us, so we have the public health, or no, the unallocated funds remaining is the 23 million and change. And then the general governmental services that goes to lost revenue, is there still 3 million of that that's unrestricted? And so it leaves 20 million that is restricted? Or can you help me understand this?
Yes,
What's the real
that's
balance?
correct. And I'm hoping the board will allocate the lost revenue to the internal projects. That would be my request.
The
So-
3 million.
So to answer her question, then, the 7 million, you're going to still have another 3 to work with? Is that what?
No, that's part of the 7 million,
Okay.
but of the 7 million, some fall under,
Okay.
Eligible under
So it's a
lost
total of
revenue,
7,
and
which
some is
includes the.
public health.
Okay, that was a good question. Thank
So,
you.
so that's how we get to the 16. Now, when we talk about those projects or areas, and we keep saying townships, are we excluding cities?
No, no,
Or is that you're just
townships,
saying townships? Okay.
municipalities,
So-
anybody that can, yeah, whatever.
So then we've got 16 million potentially left.
See, like, let me just tell you this, Georgia, like, say, City of Port Huron's in a district, right? I mean, that's a district, right? So, I mean,
It's two districts.
or two districts, but it wouldn't be additional, that would be a district, and they could do what they wanted. I'm not saying cities, because they're a city, would have a.
No, I
special-
understand,
yeah,
yep.
Okay.
Cities just, they got more, so I didn't know if that was intentional, leave them out. So if there's 16 million left, though, and it's the restricted funds, you know, to break that into eligible, ready-to-go projects, I worry that that could be a little tough for
Timeline-wise.
especially timeline-wise.
That's what I was
So-
suggesting, is get a deadline, say, get it in. If you don't get it in, let's go in someplace else. And you gotta hustle, but it's gotta
So,
get done.
but does it have to be done by district then? Can it just be done by eligible projects? And if you
Well,
get it in within the deadline,
I would like to give every district an opportunity to submit and not be beat out by some other district. And if they can't make the grade, they can't make it. They don't have eligible projects they can come up with, then it goes to something else. We'd have to figure out some other way to use that, back to the county or distribute it amongst somebody else. You know, you give them a chance to apply, find projects that fit. They can have consultants or do whatever they want, have Carrie and Fletcher approve it. If it fits, fine, go that way. If it doesn't, maybe give them another period of time, shorter period, half that time, 15 days, 14 days, a month and a half, whatever. Okay, give us a different project. And if they can't do it, it's gotta go someplace or we're gonna lose it, right? So give them an opportunity and a deadline and go forward with it. That way it gets done. Everybody has a chance.
I really feel like we have $43 million in projects in the county that need attention, and the money was allocated to the county. The county oversees all 7 of our districts, and projects like what the sheriff asked for tonight and what the health department is looking to do, that remaining 16 million or the 23 total goes a long way to service the entire county versus dividing it up amongst groups that have already received funding.
Well, my position's gonna be, I won't support that. I want it to go to the districts, a certain portion, where half of it's going to the county, and with the 33 million, we got about half already.
I just think
I
that
know.
they've collectively received 30,000 and we have, or 30 million, and we have collected.
It's a philosophical issue between, whether you want it to keep it all or to let it go down.
I don't want to keep any of it. I wish I could give all of ARPA back.
I do too.
But I think that we have overreaching or overarching services that need our attention. And I think Joy and I talked about this, like, take care of home first. We've got a lot of projects that we need to take care of, and this is a shot in the arm.
And I think this is a good first step tonight.
I agree. I think the 7 million
Yeah,
is a good
and then
first step.
and then we're gonna talk more about the other. Dave, did you have anything?
Yeah, just one thing. If it happened to be 16 million, just because we're already talking about the engineering, that would generate $540,000 for Ira Township. Then they'd only need $460,000.
Anything else? Motion to receive and file.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Adjournment.
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.